Aragorn, these woods are perilous. We should go back, Gimli suggests in Peter Jackson's film adaptation of The Fellowship of the Ring. This is madness, Aragorn. These woods are not to be trusted. We should turn back while we still can. The equivalent dialogue in Ian Chesterfield's novelization, itself adapted from Jackson's film. These two lines are a perfect illustration of how stories change when they are adapted from one medium to another. The film line is short, efficient, and easy for an audience to process instantly. The novelization, however, expands the moment. Prose allows for more elaborate phrasing because the reader controls the pace. They can read as slowly as they want to, and pause and reread lines without interrupting the medium's intended flow. Both versions are effective in their respective contexts because each is tailored to the strengths and constraints of its medium. To further explore these differences, this video will look at one part of the story in both the film and the novelization of The Fellowship of the Ring. First, we'll watch a short clip from the film. Then, we'll read the matching chapter from the novelization. Since films move quickly and can show a lot in just a few minutes, while novels often take pages to describe the same events, we'll break the novelization chapters into short passages. After each passage, we'll stop to talk about what works well in the novel, what might be stronger in the film, and how each version tells the story in its own way. We'll go back and forth like this until we've worked through the whole chapter. At the end, we'll wrap everything up by thinking about what each medium does best, where they might struggle, and how comparing them helps us understand the story in a new way. By the time we're finished, we'll have a much clearer idea of how storytelling changes when it moves from screen to page, and why that matters. Let's begin.
Stay close, young hobbits. They say that a great sorceress lives in these woods, an elf witch of terrible power. All who look upon her fall under her spell. Frodo, and are never seen again. You're coming to us. He's as the footsteps of doom. You bring great evil here, ring bearer.
Mr. Frodo?
Well, here's one dwarf she won't ensnare so easily. I have the eyes of a hawk and the ears of a fox. Ooh.
The dwarf breathed so loud we could have shot him in the dark.
Halida Lothlórien, Alalmina Lothlórien, Wiamin Yemenimi, Niendi. Aragorn, these woods are perilous. We should go back.
You have entered the realm of the Lady of the Wood. You cannot go back. Come. She is waiting. 8 there are here, yet 9 there were set out from Rivendell. Tell me, where is Gandalf? For I much desire to speak with him.
He has fallen into shadow. The quest stands upon the edge of a knife. Stray but a little, and it will fail, to the ruin of all. Yet hope remains, while the company is true. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Go now and rest, for you are weary with sorrow and much toil. Tonight you will sleep in welcome, Frodo of the Shire, one who has seen the eye. A lament for Gandalf. What do they say about him? I have not the heart to tell you. For me the grief is still too near. Take some rest. These borders are well protected. I will find no rest here. Heard her voice inside my head. She spoke of my father and the fall of Gondor. And she said to me, even now there is hope left. But I cannot see it. It is long since we had any hope. My father is a noble man, but his rule is failing, and our people lose faith. He looks to me to make things right, and I would do it. I would see the glory of Gondor restored. Have you ever seen it, Aragorn? The white tower of Ecthelion, glimmering like a spike of pearl and silver. Its banners caught high in the morning breeze. Have you ever been called home by the clear ringing of silver trumpets? I have seen the White City, long ago. One day, our paths will lead us there, and the Tower Guard shall take up the call. The Lords of Gondor have returned.
Next, we'll read the first passage from the chapter of the novelization, and then compare and analyze the differences. The Fellowship trudged onward through the fading day, following Aragorn's lead across the rocky slopes of Dimrill Dale. A mountain lake stretched before them, its surface like polished silver in the waning light. Patches of snow lingered between tufts of scrubby grass, the last vestiges of winter, reluctant to relinquish their hold on the land. Aragorn moved with renewed purpose now, striding ahead of the others. The ranger splashed through shallow pools of clear runoff, climbing to higher ground to survey the landscape ahead. Despite the weight of grief that hung over them all, something akin to hope flickered across his weathered features as he gazed into the distance. "Lothlórien," he breathed, the word itself seeming to carry an enchantment. The others joined him at the vantage point, following his gaze to where a vast forest shimmered in the valley below. Even from this distance, there was something otherworldly about those woods. A golden haze that hung about the treetops, defying the grey gloom of the overcast sky. "The realm of the Lady of Light," Aragorn continued, a reverence in his voice that Frodo had seldom heard before. "If safety can be found in Middle-earth during these dark times, it is there, beneath the ancient Malorn trees." They descended toward the valley floor, quickening their pace as the daylight continued to fade. The wide open space between them and the sanctuary of the forest made Frodo feel painfully exposed. He could not shake the feeling of unseen eyes watching from the mountains behind them. As they approached the eaves of Lothlórien, they broke into a run, crossing a field of tall grass that whispered against their legs. The hobbits struggled to keep up with the longer strides of their companions, but fear and exhaustion are powerful motivators. The transition from open plain to forest was abrupt and disorientating. One moment they were bathed in the fading twilight, the next they passed under the canopy of the first trees and entered a different world entirely. Golden leaves drifted lazily downward from impossibly tall trees with smooth silver bark. The forest floor was carpeted with soft moss and tiny yellow flowers that seemed to emit a gentle luminescence of their own. The company slowed to a walk, their footsteps muffled in the deep moss. An eerie quiet pervaded the forest, not the oppressive silence of Moria, but rather a hushed anticipation, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. Gimli motioned for the hobbits to stay close, his eyes darting suspiciously from tree to tree.
"Keep your wits about you, little folk,"
the dwarf muttered under his breath.
"They say an elf witch dwells in these woods, a sorceress of terrible power."
Frodo felt a strange prickling sensation at the back of his neck, as if invisible fingers were gently probing his thoughts.
"All who look upon her fall under her spell,"
Gimli continued, tightening his grip on his axe.
"They say none who enter her domain ever emerge unchanged, if they emerge at all."
Frodo. The hobbit startled at a voice that seemed to whisper directly inside his mind. A woman's voice, musical and ancient.
"Your coming to us is as the footsteps of doom. You bring great evil here. Ring bearer.
In his mind's eye, Frodo caught a fleeting glimpse of piercing blue eyes that seemed to see through to his very soul. He turned anxiously to Sam, who was regarding him with concern. "Are you feeling all right, Mr. Frodo?" Sam asked. "You've gone pale as milk." Before Frodo could respond, Gimli puffed out his chest confidently.
"Well, she'll find this dwarf a harder nut to crack than most,"
he declared.
"I possess the nose of a bloodhound and the reflexes of a cat."
His boast was cut short as the company suddenly found themselves surrounded by slender figures, materializing from behind the trees. Each held a bow with an arrow nocked and aimed unerringly at the intruders. The elves moved with such silent grace that even Legolas had been caught unawares. A tall elf with long golden hair stepped forward, regarding them with cool appraisal. His expression hardened, particularly when his gaze fell upon Gimli.
The dwarf's breathing was so thunderous we could have found him blindfolded,
the elf remarked dryly. Aragorn stepped forward, hands raised in a gesture of peace. He addressed the elf in the melodious elvish tongue, his voice taking on a musical quality that Frodo had never heard from him before.
"Haldir of Lórien,"
Aragorn said, switching back to the common speech.
"We seek the protection of your lady. Great peril pursues us."
Gimli bristled, his hand still on his axe handle.
"This is madness, Aragorn. These woods are not to be trusted. We should turn back while we still can."
Haldir's expression remained impassive as he replied,
"You have entered the realm of the Lady of the Wood. The choice to turn back is no longer yours to make."
His eyes settled on Frodo with such intensity that the hobbit felt as if the elf could see the ring hanging from its chain beneath his shirt. There was suspicion in that gaze, but something else too, a grudging recognition.
Come,
Haldir commanded, turning abruptly.
she is waiting.
This opening passage from the novelization demonstrates some of the clearest strengths of prose over film, most notably its ability to inhabit an internal perspective and linger on atmosphere in ways that a film camera can only hint at. We get not just the visual details of Dimrill Dale and Lothlórien, but also a layering of sensory impressions, internal thoughts, and subtle emotional cues that reveal how each character is experiencing the moment. Frodo's sense of exposure in the open plain, the prickling sensation at the back of his neck, and the mental intrusion of Galadriel's voice all work together to fold us into his subjectivity, something the film attempted to convey via editing, cinematography, and Elijah Wood's performance, but which here is stated directly, unambiguously connecting us to the Hobbit's inner life. The descriptions lean into a painterly precision. The, quote, polished silver lake, golden haze treetops, and soft moss carpet, end quotes, provide a tactile and color-rich mental image that prose can evoke through imagination alone. In this form, the author can slow the pace to dwell on the abrupt transition from plain surroundings to forest, allowing the reader to feel the shift in mood. In the film, this shift was handled with a simple visual cut, but prose can extend that transition, stretching the reader's sense of time to heighten the contrast. However, these same strengths reveal some of the medium's limitations. Without the immediacy of performance, some of the dramatic beats, Gimli's bluster, the sudden appearance of the elves, depend heavily on the reader's imagination to supply timing, tone, and body language. The film delivered Gimli's comic interruption and the elves' silent emergence with split-second precision, reinforced by the actors' expressions and the tension of live action. But here, the written version risks diluting that surprise, simply by requiring the reader to process it, line by line. Let's continue. With little choice but to comply, the Fellowship followed their escort deeper into the mysterious forest. Frodo could feel the weight of unseen eyes upon them, whether friendly or hostile, he could not tell. The strange voice did not return to his thoughts, but its echo lingered, a phantom presence in his mind. They walked for several hours as day faded completely into night, yet darkness never fully descended within the forest. A soft luminescence emanated from the very trees themselves, casting enough light to see by, without revealing too much of what might lurk in the shadows between the massive trunks. Eventually, Haldir led them to a hilltop that afforded a view of their destination. Several miles to the south rose a great hill, upon which stood the tallest trees they had yet seen. Nestled high in the crowns of these mighty Malorns was a city that gleamed with lights of green, gold, and silver in the gathering darkness.
Carascaladon,
Haldir announced with undisguised pride.
the heart of Elvendom on earth, home of Lord Celeborn and Galadriel, Lady of Light.
To the east of the city, Frodo could see where the woods ran down to the pale shimmer of a great river, the Anduin, he guessed. Beyond the river lay flat and formless land, shrouded in shadow, even as the last rays of the setting sun still illuminated Lothlórien. It seemed to Frodo that the light itself refused to venture into those distant lands. They descended from the hilltop and continued toward the city. As they drew nearer, Frodo realized that what had appeared to be a single structure was in fact an intricate network of dwellings built among the massive trees. Spiral staircases wound around the smooth silver trunks, leading to glowing chambers nestled among the branches. Night had fully descended by the time they reached the base of the largest Malorn tree at the city's center. Here, a wide staircase spiraled upward, illuminated by delicate lanterns that cast no shadow. As they climbed, Frodo marveled at the craftsmanship evident in every detail of their surroundings. Each step, each railing, each platform seemed to grow organically from the tree itself, rather than having been built upon it. Higher and higher they climbed, until they reached a broad flet near the crown of the tree. The platform was bathed in soft light that seemed to emanate from the very air around them. The walls were fashioned of interwoven branches, silver green in the ethereal light, and the ceiling above shimmered with golden leaves. They stood at the foot of a short staircase, waiting in silence. Suddenly, a blinding white light flooded the chamber from above. Frodo squinted against the glare, raising a hand to shield his eyes. As the light dimmed to a more bearable radiance, he saw two figures descending the stairs, hand in hand. Lord Celeborn led the way, his face ageless and grave beneath a crown of silver hair. Beside him walked Galadriel, Lady of the Golden Wood. Her hair was the deep gold of autumn leaves catching the last light of sunset, falling in gentle waves to her waist. Her face bore the wisdom of countless centuries, yet there was no mark of age upon her perfect features. Sam gasped softly beside Frodo. Merry and Pippin stood with mouths agape, transfixed by the ethereal beauty of the elven rulers. Even Gimli, for all his suspicion of elves, seemed momentarily humbled by their presence. Aragorn bowed low, touching his forehead in a gesture of deep respect. Frodo found himself unable to look away from Galadriel's face, particularly her eyes, ancient and knowing, as if they had witnessed the very dawn of creation. Celeborn was the first to speak, his voice like the whisper of wind through ancient trees.
8 stands before us, yet 9 set forth from Rivendell.
His gaze moved slowly across each member of the fellowship.
Tell me, where is Gandalf? I much desire to speak with him.
No one answered immediately. The grief of their loss, momentarily forgotten in the wander of Lothlórien, returned with renewed intensity. It was Galadriel who broke the silence, her voice both in the air and somehow inside Frodo's mind simultaneously. "He has fallen into shadow," she said softly, her eyes meeting Aragorn's in silent understanding. The ranger nodded, almost imperceptibly in confirmation. Galadriel's gaze swept over the company once more. "The quest stands upon the edge of a knife," she continued. "Stray but a little, and it will fail, to the ruin of all." Her penetrating eyes settled briefly on Boromir, the proud warrior of Gondor, who had withstood the horrors of Moria without faltering, now trembled beneath her gaze. Tears welled in his eyes, and he looked away, unable to bear whatever truth he saw reflected there. "Yet hope remains," Galadriel said, her voice gentling. "While the company is true." Her gaze fell upon Sam, who blushed to the roots of his sandy hair, but did not look away. Something like approval flickered across her timeless features. "Do not let your hearts be troubled," she told them all. "Tonight you will sleep in peace." As the others were led away to their resting places, Galadriel's eyes found Frodo's once more. Though her lips did not move, her voice filled his mind with crystal clarity.
"Welcome, Frodo of the Shire, one who has seen the eye."
In that moment, Frodo glimpsed something beyond her physical form, a being of blinding light and terrible power, ancient beyond reckoning. The vision lasted only an instant, before she was simply Galadriel again, beautiful and serene. But Frodo understood then why Gimli had spoken of her with such wariness. Here was power indeed, power to rival even the dark force that hunted them from afar. This passage plays directly to the strengths of prose, using the medium's ability to modulate distance and focus in order to give the reader both the grand sweep of Lothlórien's architecture and the private, almost intrusive intimacy of Galadriel's mind-to-mind communication. The approach is leisurely in pace, allowing the arrival to stretch over multiple paragraphs so the reader can absorb the sensory richness. The silver trunks, the lanterns that cast no shadow, the organically formed platforms, without needing to worry about the practical constraints inherent to film production. It's a luxury that film seldom has. To slow down and let a setting saturate the imagination before moving the plot forward. The prose also makes good use of selective viewpoints, particularly through Frodo's eyes. We experience his awe and his heightened sensitivity to unseen presences, which primes us to receive Galadriel's eventual mental contact as both beautiful and unsettling. This interplay between external spectacle and internal reaction is a tool prose wields more freely than film. The text can simply tell us that Boromir trembles beneath Galadriel's gaze, or that Sam blushes under her attention, and those internal reactions become part of the reader's direct knowledge, rather than an interpretive guess based on an actor's performance. Where the film might excel in this sequence, however, is in the sheer sensory overload of the reveal. Peter Jackson was able to command the viewer's attention with light, sound, and scale all at once. The flooding white radiance, the glitter of the Malorn city, the sparkling of Galadriel's descent, all delivered in a matter of seconds for immediate impact. But the written version necessarily translates these moments into a slower, sequential unfolding, which risks dispersing some of that overwhelming effect. In a purely visual medium, Galadriel's transformation was staged as a sudden, arresting shift. But in prose, the vision is described and then recontained, which can feel more meditative than shocking. Let's continue. Beneath the vast canopy of Caras Galadhon, the heart of the elven realm of Lothlórien, the Fellowship found brief respite from the shadows that had pursued them since Moria. As night descended, the great Malorn trees glowed with an ethereal silver-blue light, their enormous trunks spiraling skyward, adorned with delicate walkways and elegant dwellings that seemed to emerge organically from the living wood. Gimli, Legolas, Merry, Pippin, Frodo and Sam were ushered to a pavilion set amidst a circle of trees near a crystalline fountain. Elven attendants, moving with the quiet grace that seemed inherent to their kind, provided them with soft couches, fresh food, and wine that tasted of summer blossoms and distant starlight. Above them, through gaps in the golden leaves, stars pierced the velvet darkness. The hobbits settled beneath a white tent, their small frames dwarfed by the majesty around them. Brilliant sconces illuminated winding pathways at the base of the massive trees, casting pools of warm light amid the blue shadows. As the night deepened, a haunting melody drifted down from the branches above, voices so pure they seemed to vibrate the very air. Legolas, now dressed in a flowing white silk shirt that complemented his fair complexion, paused while carrying a silver jug toward a font beside the hobbit's tent. His features, usually composed, now betrayed a profound sorrow. "The elves sing for Gandalf," he murmured, his voice barely audible above the gentle cadence of the lament. "Their words carry the weight of ages." Merry looked up from where he had been arranging his bedroll. "What story do they tell of him?" he asked, his curiosity temporarily overcoming his grief. Legolas shook his head slightly, unable to meet the hobbit's gaze. "I cannot bring myself to translate their verses," he replied, setting down the jug with careful precision. "The wound of his passing remains too fresh in my heart." Not far from the group, Boromir sat alone on an exposed root, his broad shoulders hunched forward, as if bearing an invisible burden. The moonlight caught the gleam of moisture on his cheeks, a warrior's tears shed in solitude. Aragorn noticed his isolation and approached quietly, concern etched across his weathered face. "You should find some rest," Aragorn suggested gently, kneeling beside him. "These borders are well guarded. No harm will come to us tonight." Boromir did not look up at first. When he spoke, his voice carried the resonance of a man struggling against a rising tide of despair. "Sleep eludes me in this place," he admitted, his fingers tracing absent patterns on the smooth bark beneath him. "Her voice, the lady's voice, penetrated my thoughts." He drew a deep breath, steadying himself. "She spoke to me of Gondor's decline, of my father's failing strength. She told me hope might still exist, though I confess I cannot envision it." Now he turned to face Aragorn, revealing eyes clouded with anguish. It has been so long since my people have known anything but the shadows advance. Aragorn settled beside him, the pendant that Arwen had given him catching the moonlight as he moved. A gentle breeze stirred Boromir's shoulder-length brown hair as the two men sat in momentary silence. My father is a noble ruler, Boromir continued, his voice growing stronger as he spoke of home. But his spirit wanes with each passing season, and our people's faith diminishes with it. They look to me as their future guardian. His expression softened with something akin to wistful pride. And I would fulfill that duty gladly. I would see Gondor restored to its former brilliance. He turned to Aragorn with sudden intensity. Have you ever beheld it? Minas Tirith at daybreak, when the white tower of Ecthelion catches the first light. It stands like a slender needle of pearl and silver against the mountains, its banners dancing in the morning air. Boromir's voice took on a quality of reverence. Have you ever felt the stirring in your blood when the silver trumpets call across the plain, summoning you home? A shadow of memory passed across Aragorn's face. I have seen the White City, he acknowledged quietly. Many years ago. Something in Aragorn's tone, a buried affection for the stone halls of his ancestors, kindled hope in Boromir's eyes. He leaned forward, clasping Aragorn's shoulder with newfound vigour. One day we shall walk its streets together, he declared, a smile breaking through his melancholy. And when that day comes, the tower sentinels will take up the ancient call. The lords of Gondor have returned. Aragorn offered a smile in return, but as Boromir's gaze shifted away, his own eyes darkened with an unspoken burden, the weight of a destiny he had long kept at arm's length. This final passage plays to one of prose's most distinct strengths, its ability to pause the forward thrust of the plot in favour of lingering within a quiet emotional beat. In the film, this entire exchange between Aragorn and Boromir was compressed into a handful of lines, intercut with shot-reverse shots of the actors' faces. But in prose, the writer can stretch the moment to allow each gesture, tone shift, and flicker of expression to register fully, layering the melancholy of the setting with the private inner burdens of both characters. The sensory world of Caras Galadhon is rendered with a painter's attention to light and colour, the silver-blue glow of the Malorns, the blue shadows softened by warm sconces, the crystalline fountain, the silver jug in Legolas's hands. These details not only place the reader in a fully realized physical space, but also act as emotional cues. The ethereal beauty and otherworldly calm of Lothlórien is tinged with grief, and the description reflects that. The film attempted to show this visually, but only prose can slow the reader's gaze, letting the imagery soak in alongside the character's own absorption of it. Where the prose shows its limitations, however, is in the way pacing interacts with dramatic tension. This is a pause chapter, one designed to give characters space and to deepen the reader's investment. But in purely textual form, the emotional rhythm can feel unmoored from the stakes of the larger journey. The looming dangers that make this interlude precious remain off stage for a long stretch. In the film, this part of the story arrives after a long action scene and gives the audience a moment to catch their breath before the next action scene arrives. But here, the threat recedes almost entirely for page after page, while long conversations and setting take precedence. In summary, this chapter from the novelization capitalizes on prose's ability to blend exterior detail with interior experience, painting not just what happens, but how it feels to those involved. Where the film excelled at momentum, visual spectacle, and the interplay of performance, the written medium thrives on nuance, intimacy, and the deliberate shaping of a reader's focus, qualities that this chapter uses to immerse us in the crossing from the mortal wilds into the enchanted realm. Thank you for watching this comparative analysis. Next time, we'll be comparing the scene where Frodo looks into Galadriel's mirror with the corresponding chapter in the novelization and analyzing the differences. Take care, and if you're listening to this, please send help.